Hello everyone, I again welcome you to this course, Introduction to Indian Writing in English. As all of you know that we were discussing a very well written, a very melodious poem, Night of the Scorpion by Nassim Ezekiel. There are few things which we discussed already. I would like to say that when we started discussion, we talked about the contribution of Nassim Ezekiel as a poet. After that, we saw the contribution of Nassim Ezekiel in establishing Indian writing in English in post-colonial literature. After that, in the last class, we looked at how various themes, various literary themes and non-literary themes are covered by Nassim Ezekiel into this poem Night of the Scorpion. Well, friends, we have to move now to the last element which we have to discuss about this poem Night of the Scorpion, that is rural versus urban life. There is a comparison of the rural landscape with the urban landscape, which we can see with the lens of this poem Night of the Scorpion. But before that, as all of you know, that we have to discuss in brief the learning outcomes of this lecture. The first one will be, as all of you know, to employ an insight about the oeuvre of Indian writers. I must say that when I discuss the names and the contributions of the other Indian writers in the earlier classes, you might have understood that how vast the horizon of Indian writing in English has, with the contribution of the writers like A.K. Ramanujan, Nassim Ezekiel and many others. The second outcome is comparing the historical context in which these texts were written. Well, friends, I hope that till this lecture you are able to associate the historical context with which this poem is written. The historical context is of the life of simple people of the rural areas of India. And then the third one is illustrate the various writing dimensions of Indian writers. Well, friends, when we read this poem, like we did in the last class, we are able to understand the dimensions of Indian writers. The language might be simple, but the meanings might be difficult to understand. There are surface meanings, but then there are also hidden meanings. The meanings beneath the basic understanding, and only those can understand who can read the lines again and again and again. Well, moving now to this topic, rural versus urban India, the first thing which I need to tell you is that Ezekiel's poetry is a criticism of life. Well, you might think that every poem is a criticism of life. Well, this is not right. When we talk about Nassim Ezekiel, this is in true sense a criticism of life or a critical analysis of life. Which kind of life? Indian life. The Indian way of living, about the Indian culture, about the Indian beliefs, about the Indian system of living. This poem is a criticism of all these things. He is most famous for his wry commentaries on contemporary India, often writing in an exaggerated Indian English. For example, the overuse of present continuous tense. Well, my dear friends, as all of you know that when we are using English language and we are at the elementary stage, we generally use sentences into present continuous tense. And Nassim Ezekiel has intentionally used this present continuous tense into his poems. You will find the same pattern into this poem Night of the Scorpion, and again the same pattern will be visible into the next poem which we are going to discuss after the completion of this unit. The name of that poem is Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpa T.S. So this present continuous tense use is something which gives the commentaries on the contemporary India. How much contemporary India is different in the works of these writers, through the lens of these writers, through the eyes of these writers. We have to look on the exaggerated Indian English which these writers has used with the help of their poems. As a critique of his age, he shows the superstitions of his age in his poetry. Well, friends, Nassim Ezekiel can be considered as the critique of his age. And why he can be called as a critique of his age? Because he do not try to hide the superstitions in the Indian society. Those superstitions need to be highlighted. Those superstitions need to be discussed into literature. We cannot hide them from the world. We must not hide them with the world, so that a true critical thinking can be developed after reading these kind of literary works. In Night of the Scorpion, we see when his mother was stung by the scorpion. Who is his? As all of you know, his is the poet or the speaker of the poem. The gender is not revealed. That can be a boy, that can be a girl. So we need to understand that when the mother was stung by the scorpion, the neighbors poured into her hut in offer advice and help. Well, like friends generally happens in the rural areas, there is a very, let's say, small community in which people live. There are very limited number of people who live in a village, and all of them know each other. Now, when such kind of incident happens, the people swarmed like flies into the house of the poet, and one after the other they started giving advices to poet's father, because the mother was not in a state of taking advices. She was groaning, she was twisting with pain, and the father was there to understand what people has to say, what people has to convey, what neighbors has to convey to him. They said that by the endless pain, the sins of her previous birth would be burnt away, and her next birth suffering would be decreased. Now this point, dear students, when this point was raised by the peasants, we can understand that this notion is related to the notion of Hindu religion, Hindu beliefs, and many other religions also follow the similar kind of notion, that if you are intentionally feeling some kind of physical pain, some kind of physical damage has happened into your body, then that pain will burn all your sins of the earlier ages or the sins which you have committed in the present age. So in this way, there is a optimistic argument which these people, which these peasants give to the father of the poet, that let the mother twist into pain, let the mother groan with pain, let the mother feel that pain for more number of, let's say, hours, for more time, so that her sins can be burnt into that pain. These are the common superstitions and beliefs of common people. These common people, these common villagers, these illiterate villagers who had not seen so much life, whose thinking is limited to their village, they have some superstitions, they have some beliefs, and they follow them just like the words of God. They are the reality to them. And if I am talking to you, if I am not wrong, you must also be having some kind of superstitions and beliefs in your family, in your neighboring places, in your community. So this gives a realistic touch to this poem, Night of the Scorpion. And we see the neighbors tried to cure her, and her husband tried every curse and blessing, but despite these things, time proves to be the best healer. They tried their best. although that effort was not sufficient, my dear friends, we had seen it in the poem that the neighbors tried to cure her and her husband, but that was just a emotional sympathy. That was just a, let's say, useless effort, but at least they tried. So there is optimism in the poem. Every curse and blessing was given to the mother, the patient who was twisting with pain. But despite these things, time proved to be the best healer. Ultimately, friends, what happens? That after 20 hours, it lost its sting. When we read the poem, we find that for 20 hours, the mother twisted into pain. For 20 hours, there were many people, but nobody was able to do anything. Nobody was able to directly cure the mother. They were not able to help her coming out of her pain. But as all of you know, friends, that when no help get given to us, time is the biggest healer. And the same happens with the mother in this poem. Modern poets are generally conscious, but the problem prevailing in the society, and they try to bring out the problems. Well, this is the effort which Nassim Ezekiel has put with the help of this poem, Night of the Scorpion. There are few problems in our society. There are few, let's say, superstitions into our society. But are we actually conscious about it? Are we actually trying to bring forth those problems from our society through our literature, through our works? Writing and publishing literature is not the only way to take out these problems, but we can also do these things with the help of other modes of social networking, friends. And so in his poems, he tries to show the problem of the society, of the country, and of the world. Friends, when we read this poem, we find that the writer is moving from one incident to the generalization, to the universality, and which gives a universal approach to this poem. The incident is one of a very remote village, of a very rural village, but it leads to a universal message. The universal message that there are different kind of cultures in which different communities of people are living in the different parts of the world, in different countries. But we have to understand that the culture in which they are living is the reality. The culture in which they are living is not a problem for the society. That is the ultimate reality of their society. So thus, the message was conveyed from the society to the country to the world. And thus, the poem became very famous, not only in India, but also to the readers of the other outside countries. It seems that he is much more concerned not only about the problems of his own country, but also of the whole world. Well, friends, this is something which is the basic element need to be found in some poet or writer. The poet need to be sympathetic towards the problems of the world. And Nassim Ezekiel is, and he has proved it with the help of this poem, Night of the Scorpion. He is concerned about the problems of his own country. He is a critique of his own country. He is a critique of the system, the cultural system, or the spiritual system of his own country, but he is also a critique of the system of the world. Indian English is considered as rural by the elite British English speakers, but poet intentionally uses Indian English and regional words. Like I told you, friends, that Nassim Ezekiel was a professor of English language. Even then, he used various words and phrases which belong to the regional community of India, which belong to the regional languages. And those regional words, phrases, and sentences which the writer, which the poet puts into the poem, makes this poem realistic and modernistic in its true sense. He wants to create classification between urban Indians who speak British English and rural Indians who speak Indian English. Well, friends, all of you know that Indian society is divided after the presence of Britishers. After Britishers came into India and they introduced English language into India, the society divided into two classes. There were elite people who used to speak English language in their day-to-day language, and then there are people who are considered as inferior, who are considered as, let's say, rural, who are considered as non-elite. These are the people who used to speak into regional languages, into Hindi language, into their mother tongue, or into any other language. But this poem is an effort by the writer Nassim Ezekiel that regionalism is also modernity. Regionalism is also beautiful. Regionalism is also important, and this is an essential element into our life. He prefers contemporary Indian English to write his poetry, which exposes his modernity. Well, when we talk about this theme of rural versus urban comparison, we must say that Nassim Ezekiel was a poet who preferred contemporary Indian English to write his poetry, which exposes his modernity. This is the way English is spoken into the remote areas of India. This is the way the English is spoken by the Indians, the natives, our, let's say, brothers and sisters, Indian fraternity, and the same language is adapted by Nassim Ezekiel in this poem, Night of the Scorpion. In his writing, we find the following features of Indian English. Well, friends, when we talk about the Nassim Ezekiel's poetry, there are few features which I need you to put attention on, and thus in this way we will understand that how, let's say, the poetry of Nassim Ezekiel is different from the other poets of his age. The first characteristic is the unusual progressive form. The poet is very progressive, but that progressiveness is a kind of unusual which is reflected through his poetry. Indian people use progressive form of express their normal expression, but according to some grammarians, some words cannot be used in the progressive form. Well, this progressive means the progressive use of verbs, the progressive use of language. And there is an opinion of grammarians that we cannot change the tense of every verb into the progressive tense, or let's say present continuous tense. But he has used these words expressing the progressive form. So can we say that Nassim Ezekiel do not have command over grammar? Can we say that Nassim Ezekiel do not have command over English language? This is not right. Let us try to understand it with the help of this example from another work of Nassim Ezekiel with the name The Patriot. I am reading the line. I am standing for peace and non-violence. I am simply not understanding. Now, my dear friends, if you look at the second sentence, it is used in the present progressive tense. It is written in the present progressive tense. The poet says, I am simply not understanding. Now, this sentence is not written with the standard English, but poet is intentionally using the progressive tense in the second line. Here, standing and understanding have been named progressive. Now, in the first sentence, we have the word standing. In the second sentence, we have the word understanding. Maybe the poet has used them to maintain a rhyme of ing of one line with another line. But we are able to understand that this kind of, let's say, use of English language is not used by the elites. the so-called Europeans and the native speakers of English language, but the poet has intentionally used progressive tense to create an Indianness into his language. The next characteristic is the use of double verb. Now the poet uses the double verb into, let's say, his poems to create that concept of rural versus urban differences. No other writer in English, either native or foreign, has used double verbs in poetry. But Ezekiel is the one who has used it. Why Ezekiel uses this double verb? Let us read the line and then I will try to explain it to you. Why world is fighting, fighting? Well, my dear friends, then in these lines, Nassim Ezekiel has used the verb fighting, fighting. He is again using the word fighting in the same line. Why he is doing it? Well, it happens when a person belongs to the rural area and the person do not have so many words to say in the line. A person has a very limited vocabulary. A person is the native speaker of some other language. The person is not comfortable with English language. He do not have so many words in which he can express his ideas and due to which he repeats the words. So this is known as the, let's say, the use of double verb into the poetry of Nassim Ezekiel. We can say that Nassim's poems are true modern poems considering both content and form. Now this is very important point, friends. There are 2 points which are making into, let's say, 2 contexts. One is content and the other one is form. The poetry of Nassim Ezekiel is not only modern in the form of content, but it is also modern in the form of form. The form of the poem is totally makes it different from the other poems which are written in the same age, the same scenario. Let us take some examples from the poem Night of the Scorpion. Now let us look at the poem Night of the Scorpion as we are looking at this poem in this unit. When I talk about Night of the Scorpion, this poem is translated as an emblematic juxtaposition of haziness and light. Well, friends, when you read this poem, you find that everyone is in the haziness. Everyone is, let's say, trying to do something, but he is not able to do. And then there is a sense of light into this poem. Well, the light can have another meaning also, friends. Light might mean that these people are living in the dark ages. These people are very backward and there need to be someone who can take these people out from that darkness and who can bring them into light. The night, the scorpion, the toxic substance and the agony speaks of dimness. Well, there are, friends, many images in this poem from the rural scenario which can make us understand the dimness. Dimness, as all of you know, the dimming of the light means the light is very less. There is more darkness and less light. So that kind of dimness is visible with the images of night because that incident happened at night and there is no electricity in the villages at night. Then we have the image of a scorpion. The scorpion is generally not found at the light areas, at the crowded areas. The scorpion is always found at the remote areas. The toxic substance, the toxic which is there in the body of the mother, she cannot cure out of her, let's say, of the venom of the scorpion. And the agony which the mother faces for 20 hours, it suggests the kind of dimness which the village life has. The ceaseless lane remains for expectation and recovery. Friends, even after the mother was bitten by the scorpion, the rain was continuously happening in the village, which suggests that there is expectation, there is recovery, which the mother is having in that heavy rainfall in that remote village. We have the words like candles, lamps, neighbors, and at last the recuperation of the mother speaks to light. Well, the words like candles, lamps, they are the symbolic for light, positivity, hopefulness. And then we have the words like neighbor. Now, the word neighbor is very important, friend, for someone who is very isolated in his life. He needs neighbors who can help him or her. She needs neighbors who can, let's say, console her, make her, try to console her and try to bring her or him into peace in such kind of situation. And in this way, we can understand that the mother's sentence is at the end. When the mother says that scorpion had not bitten her children, but the scorpion had bitten her, due to which her children are saved from that pain and agony, it suggests a ray of hope, a light into the darkness, a light through which those people who are living in these dark ages can come out of their dark life. The poem can likewise be thought of as emblematic of good and insidiousness as well. Well, friends, when we talk about this poem, we see that this poem is emblematic of good and insidious. Now, what is this good and insidious? This is something which suggests that even if in the remote areas where the people are illiterate, they have the kind of goodness in them. They have the kind of, let's say, positivity in their attitude. And thus, only knowledge and wisdom are not associated with education, but knowledge and wisdom, they are different from education. Ezekiel uses a simile comparing the villagers to swarms of flies. It is striking that he uses an insect image to describe the people's reaction to an invertebrate sting. While, as all of us know, that Ezekiel is a very masterpiece in using various kind of similes into his poetry. He compares the villagers, the neighbors, with the swarms of flies. Swarms of flies means the life of these villagers is just like insects, is just like, let's say, they are somewhere living in a remote area. Nobody is paying attention to them, and thus they are living the life of unknown, the life of unknown flies and insects. So in this way, we can understand that the people's reaction to the sting is also very common, which we generally see into the Indian society. He develops the simile in the following line, they buzzed the name of God. Well, friends, when we look at the use of words which the poet has done into this poem, they buzzed the name of God. Buzzed, now, friends, buzzing sound is uttered by some insects into our ecology. And when these people are buzzing the name of God, so buzzing, see friends, buzzing sound has no meaning, it has no sense. The insects just use this buzzing sound into their language. In the same way, these people are using buzzing sound, the names of God, which do not mean anything to mother. What does the fly simile suggest about Ezekiel's attitude to the neighbors? Now, this simile of flies, it is suggesting Ezekiel's attitude to neighbors. Ezekiel believed that these people are just like flies. The neighbors' candles and lanterns throw giant scorpion shadows on the wall. Now, this line is also important, friends, because the scorpion, also, although a very trivial insect, but shown as a very bigger one. We know that the scorpion has already fled, so are these images of people themselves. So in this way, we can understand that the images are there in the mind of the people. A scorpion has 8 legs, so the shadow of the small group of people standing together and look like the scorpion. If so, what does they show about Ezekiel's attitude to the neighbors? We have to understand this. Again, There is a contrast between the neighbor's peace of understanding and the mother who twisted groaning on the mat. We need to understand the contrast with which the neighbors and these phrases are used in the poem. It is ironic that they are at peace because of her discomfort. How can it happen? But we had seen it in the poem, that the people are comfortable, but on the other hand, the mother is twisting in pain. There is alliteration throughout the poem that helps to link or emphasize ideas. The scorpion is seen parting with his poison. The scorpion is moving and nobody can stop him. Ezekiel's father tries herbs and hybrids, but are they of any use? Obviously not. Ezekiel sees flaming feeding on his mother. There are flames which are feeding on his mother, but in the light of those flames, the mother do not get any comfort. Underline other examples of alliteration and see if they can explain the effectiveness of their use. There is a lot of repetition so that we hear the villagers' prayers and incarnations. We had seen it in the poem. Ezekiel uses direct speech, may, to dramatize the scene, and echoed, they said, is like a chorus. It means the people are just singing like a chorus, but it is of no use to the mother. A group of characters in classical Greek drama who comment on the action but don't take part in it. In a song, the chorus is a section that is particularly repeated. So when we read this poem, we see that all these people are singing like a chorus without, let's say, any sympathy towards the mother, without having any solution to the mother. But ultimately, the mother comes out of the pain after 20 hours of twisting. So with this, I end Unit 1 and I end this poem, Night of the Scorpion. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much.